Now, tomorrow Qantas will be announcing its financial results for the year, and there's been speculation it could be the company's worst ever result, with a bottom line loss of potentially around $1 billion. Independent Senator Nick Xenophon has been following the fall of Qantas in recent years. He's concerned about what he sees as a lack of accountability in the company, and he recently took a complaint to ASIC in relation to the conduct of senior management and the board of Qantas. Senator Xenophon joins us now. Welcome to The Drum.
Hi, Steve.
What can you tell us about this complaint that you've taken to ASIC?
Well, the complaint basically relates to a number of statements that Qantas has made over the years in terms of, for instance, back in February 2011, there was a rosy picture painted with Qantas' half-yearly results. 4 months later, Qantas said that its international division was in terminal decline, and there was a 25% drop in the share price in the meantime. Shareholders didn't get any briefings in the interim period to let them know what was going on, and most recently in October last year, during the AGM on the 18th of October, there again was a fairly positive picture painted of Qantas' future, yet 7 weeks later, on December the 5th, Qantas management announced that there would be significant losses, and in the meantime the share price had fallen by about a quarter again. So my argument is that the rules of continuous disclosure are important. Qantas says that it complies with them, but in the course of a Senate inquiry process earlier this year, Qantas responded to questions I put on notice, and they said that they comply with their requirements, but that they give briefings to institutional investors and that they are commercial in confidence. I think that's wrong. It begs a bigger question for corporate Australia, that mum and dad investors, small investors, should have the same rights, the same information as big institutional investors. So
are you pushing for legal reform here to give individual shareholders parity with the institutional shareholders?
Well, that should be the case, and interestingly, ASIC's Greg Medcraft has spoken about that not relatively recently. There was an incident or a fine imposed on Newcrest Mining of about $1.2 million in relation to similar issues. I think there is scope for reform, but it does raise the issue of where Qantas is heading, and I don't think institutional investors ought to get, if that's what they're getting, different information from the small investors in Qantas. There are something like 117,000 investors with 10,000 shares or less in Qantas, and these are figures that I flesh out in terms of remuneration and performance of Qantas compared to other airlines in an op-ed piece I've written for the SMH tomorrow.
Okay, well, tell us more about that. How does the pay packet of Alan Joyce compare with his contemporaries in other airlines around the region?
Well, I've done a comparison with Cathay Pacific, Singapore Airlines and Air New Zealand, who, by the way, Air New Zealand, still majority government owned. It was renationalised a few years ago. It posted a very healthy profit of about $250 million. It has about a quarter of the aircraft of the Qantas group, so it's doing pretty well, and it's in a similar demographic, similar position to geographic position to Qantas in a sense. But effectively, it seems that the three CEOs of Cathay Pacific, Singapore Airlines and Air New Zealand earned about the same, or back in the 2012-13 year, as Alan Joyce earned, of $5.1 million. And given that the share price of Qantas has gone down about 40% since Alan Joyce took over the helm of Qantas, it seems to be inversely proportional to performance.
Okay, so how do we know it's the CEO's fault? How do we know it's the board's fault? How do we know it's not other factors that has led to poor results from Qantas?
Well, I think this is a bit of a three-ring circus. It's the management, it's the board in terms of their responsibilities to sign off on what management does, but it's also institutional investors who've been strangely silent in relation to Qantas's fairly dismal performance in recent years. If they have been assured by briefings from Qantas that things are going to turn around at some time in the future, then that same information should be given to mum and dad investors around the country.
All right, well, we'll watch with interest the results tomorrow. Nick Xenophon, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Steve.
And thanks to all of our panellists tonight, Kim Williams, Jane Currow and Chris Berg. Tomorrow on the show, one of Mexico's most fearless journalists, Lydia Cacho, is our guest. You can check out the website at abc.net.au/thedrum. Eleanor Hall will be here tomorrow. I'll see you soon.